Okay, hi everybody. We're going to continue our series on codependency tonight, and we're going to kind of get into the meat of the program tonight. I want to talk a lot about the elements of family of origin and the history of your families. We'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. I want to begin tonight by doing something I posted on Facebook today. It's a prayer. Every morning, as part of my morning prayers, I always recite this prayer. It was given to me. It comes from a beautiful book called Until Today, a meditation book that was given to me by a very special lady, Teresa Barrett, who was a counselor here at Starting Point. And I always love reading her inscription. She always gives me advice anyway. She's still from the grave, is still giving me advice. I love it. I love her and miss her. So I'm going to read that prayer and get that started for tonight. God, I give myself to you as a loving offering. May I always recognize the ways in which you are loving me. May I always be an expression of your love. May I always be an expression of your truth. May I always act upon your wisdom. May I always bring the energy of your spirit into every situation that you can touch the hearts and minds of all people. God, I open myself to you. May I be filled with the light of your presence. May I be filled with the power of your truth. May I live up to the faith you have in me. May I fulfill the purpose you have etched in me. May I learn to depend upon, rely upon, and trust you in every aspect of the life you have entrusted to me. May my life be a shining example of your wisdom and glory. May I dignify your presence in me and in my life by living the principle of your love. Thank you, God, for I know that as I ask, you answer. For all I have received and for all that is yet to come, I am already grateful. I love that reading and that prayer because one of the things I've learned over the years in doing codependency work is prayer is a big part of it. It's our connection to the other side. So tonight what I want to do, I'll review a little bit and then get into what I call the meat and potatoes of the program. This week and next week, I'll be doing family of origin work, and then we'll talk about inner child work for next week. When I talk about the concept of family of origin, I made a statement in the past lectures. It's a very important statement. We don't want people doing their family of origin work unless they're doing it with a positive attitude and with a mind of healing. See, again, this is not about finding out what's wrong with you. We've done that for a long period of time. It's about being able to embrace our history, to learn from it, to grow from it, to let it become our teacher, to embrace it. Our history is our greatest teacher. And so I gave you, when I started this aspect of family of origin, last week I talked about the 7 questions. And if you get an opportunity, you want a copy of them, you can download them on the website under Vince's Corner. The bottom where it says alternate resources, you'll see the 7 questions. These are the basic questions in doing what I call a family inventory. Because when I talk about families, try to remember, I'm not just talking about your blood family. I'm talking about the 5 families we mentioned before. Your neighborhood, your culture, your environment, your religious family, your peers. We're members of so many different families. We're all interconnected with one another. And basically, we learn and we grow, especially as children, from the families that are around us. We talk about doing family of origin work. We concentrate tonight on the first 10 to 12 years of your life. We call them the foundation years. They're very important. All of our traits, all of our characteristics, all of our foundations are developed in us in the first 10 to 12 years of our life. And the amazing part about it is we then have to be able to look at these systems, learn from them, and grow from them. They are our greatest teachers. And I'll tell you another beautiful thing. Everything we went through in the course of our journey, no matter what it is, relates back to the foundations and to the basics. And I believe this very deeply, that the little girl, the little boy inside of each and every one of us, we have to learn something tonight. And that is, how do I start giving that little boy or that little girl a voice? I don't know about you, but in growing up, I didn't really have a voice. In my generation, I learned little kids should be seen and not heard. So be quiet and mind your own business. Secondly, you don't know anything. The giants knew everything. We didn't know anything. And thirdly, if we did speak out or express our feelings, we were told we're being disrespectful, we're not being true, and therefore we should be loyal. I don't know about you, but I learned as a kid, never, ever, 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 ever talk anything about the family. Keep the family secrets. And God, we had a ton of them. And I learned today that the more I keep secrets, the more I bury stuff inside of me, the more it eats away at me, and eventually will destroy me. And that's why one of the things I learned this a long time ago from some very beautiful gentlemen way back a lot of years in the South Philly AA group. We used to call them the old timers. You know why we did that? Because they were old. And now I come to find out, as Sue reminds me all the time, that I'm one of them now. So it's totally amazing. But the bottom line is, they taught me something very powerful. I want to share it with you tonight. They said that the greatest therapy tool on the face of the earth is the power of the pen and the power of writing. They truly believed. The old Italians used to say, don't use the machines, use the pen, no machines. And so basically we're learning that when you actually write, you process. It's powerful. I learned this in a very powerful way, and I know how much it meant to me, because even the books I wrote by hand. Because when I write, I process. When I write, stuff opens up. It's amazing. And yet we have to be careful, because today we try to get away from all that. You got to go back to the basics, back to the fundamentals. And so we encourage people. I'll give you some tools I'd like you to have to be able to do your family of origin work. The main tools are, I'd like you to be able to get yourself 2 notebooks. You can get them at the $1.25 store. One notebook will be your negative notebook. One will be your positive notebook. Next, I'm going to ask you to get yourself something called a God box. And I'll explain that later in a couple of minutes. Secondly, get some writing equipment, and then learn what I call, how do I do an inventory of my families of origin? See, really, in reality, the topic should be families of origin. And so when I do an inventory, I use those 7 questions, because those 7 questions are telling me, what are my perception of my parents, my perception of my grandparents, my perception of my family, my perception of my culture, my perception of my neighborhood, my perception of my environment, my perception of my religious background, all these areas, my peers, the way in which I grew up, what kind of role models that I have for relationships. All these things interconnect and developed in me certain patterns and certain traditions. For example, my mother, of course, when you go to therapy, automatically you talk about mom and dad. So my mother taught me, to be possessive, to be controlling. She basically controlled and possessed me like crazy. My father taught me to be the biggest caretaker on the face of the earth. But I went to second level when I did this work. I went back and studied their history. What caused them to be who they were? Where did they come from? And doing history was a powerful thing for me, because it got me in touch with who I am, what I'm all about. It also helped me to get in touch with my feelings and to open up different doors inside of me. And that's why I get excited about this, because I really believe being able to do research in your family of origin and your foundations, you learn so much about yourself as a person. And I'll give you some examples. Look at my mom. My mom was the addict in my family. She was into a lot of drugs. She also got caught up in other areas of her life. She was also a compulsive overeater. So a lot of my addictive personality came from my mom. I used to see that as something negative until I finally embraced it. And now that I have the gift of recovery, I realize that's a gift my mother gave me, the gift of my addictive personality. I will not be connected to so many beautiful and wonderful people today if it wasn't for that gift. I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to say it was a gift. My mother also controlled me, but I understand now why. And think about it just for a minute. And doing her history. Her mother was born in 1904. Her mother died when she was 2 years old. Her father put her into St. Vincent's orphanage with her sister. She stayed there for 5 years until he went out and found a new wife. Because in 1906, men did not raise children. Only women did. That was women's work. And therefore, he had to get a new wife. Then he went back and picked my mother up. Now, she got abandoned by her mother in death, abandoned by her father, put into an orphanage, raised by the nuns, which later on had a powerful effect on me, and basically was picked up later on and had to enter with a stepmother and also a lot of half brothers and sisters. So all of a sudden she was put into a whole different family. So when I was born, and I'm an only child, my mother basically decided I was going to be everything she wanted me to be. So she smothered me, protected me. And I'll tell you one thing, she got abandoned a lot. I would never get abandoned. See, I know now where a lot of my issues connect back to her issues, connect back to her history. My mother also, because she worked very hard and worked at Camel Soup for 35 years, and was on the can line. You got to think about this for a minute. How would you like to have a job for 35 years sitting in front of cans as they went by you, picking out the dented cans as they went by, 8 hours a day? So everybody on the can line popped no-dose pills. They're amphetamines. And they lived on them. And as a result, she became addicted. They became normal to her. And so literally she lived on no-dose pills, on amphetamines. Then she lived on comfort food. And literally, everything inside of her was shut down and closed off. She had to survive and get through life. It helped me tremendously to realize the fact, instead of me spending my life, which I did for a long period of time, blaming her, being angry at her, being frustrated with her, and doing my family work, I began to realize she wasn't a bad guy. She was who she was. She put me in the seminary when I was 14 years old. It's part of my history. I was angry at her for that. And now I'm grateful, because God forbid if I stayed home, I'd still be mama's little boy. So all of a sudden I had to grow up. I had to become responsible. I had to become productive. I never would have done half the things that I did in my life if I didn't go away. Was it scary? Yeah. Was it beautiful? Yeah. But I realize today, these are all gifts. And yet only in doing this work and going through those questions, getting in touch with my history, even getting to know my grandparents who I never met. They all died before I was born. But I had to get to know them through other family members. And I could understand the history, the background of where they came from and how it affected me in the course of my life and my journey. And that's what this really is all about. The culture, the environment, the growing up, the messages. I still joke about this today. My mother had some rules. Everybody had rules back then. It was totally amazing. But the bottom line was, my mother used to say, never, never, never fly in an airplane. If God wanted you to fly, God would have given you wings. I was scared to death to fly in an airplane until I got married. Then my wife finally helped me overcome that by taking me on my first flight. I was scared out of my mind. Even walking down the walkway, going on the flight, I thought maybe I better take a peek. My mother might be standing there waiting for me, even though she was deceased at the time. But the old tapes play. The fears come into play because the core fears of codependency are control and fear. That's the core. And therefore, later on, we'll learn in self-parenting the need for the energy of love, for the energy of healing, for the energy of growth, and to get away from the negativity of blame. We all look for scapegoats. I realized today, my mother was not my scapegoat. She was my friend, and she also was my teacher. I look back on it today and realize there's beautiful things I learned from that experience. Even from religious background, the ways I was raised, the neighborhood, the culture. I grew up in a crazy culture. I grew up in the Italian compound. Back in those days, the compounds were normal. Like we lived on Line Street in Camden. And in a block and a half, I had me, my mother, my father, and me, and then all of her sisters and brothers lived within a block and a half of each other. We call that the Italian compound, which meant everybody knew everybody else's business. Everybody had their nose in everybody else's stuff. And as a result, you couldn't get away with anything. So the concept was, it was a culture thing, a connection thing, and then a thing connected to different backgrounds. And as a result, we learn after a while to look into your heritage, to look into your background, embrace it, learn from it, but then open the door and learn new things and new directions and more diversity, open up the doors in new directions. But again, back then, you're not allowed to. And so we have to realize the fact that it's our job to learn how to learn the principle of self-parenting, to be able to parent ourselves, and realize the fact that as adults, we have to learn to parent the child. So there's two parts of us, and your history is a big piece of it. There's a little kid inside of each and every one of us, a beautiful, beautiful, special little girl and little guy. And there's an adult inside of us. The adult's the part of us that's logical. The little child inside of us is the lover, is the spirit, is the energy. But that little child needs a voice, needs to be able to express its feelings. That's what we show you to do. It's a beautiful journaling technique, and it does work, and it's powerful. We tell you, take your negative notebook, reflect back with those 7 questions on your childhood, those first 10 to 12 years, and make a list of all the negative persons, places, and things that affected you as a child. Then when you're done with that negative list, go on the other side in the positive notebook and make a list of all the positive persons, places, and things that affected you as a child. In doing those lists, you're actually giving your little girl, your little boy, permission to finally put on paper the things that affected you negatively, things that affected you positively. And some of the people were on both sides. Then you learn a technique. This is called the self-parenting technique. It's what we call the releasing technique. For example, again, I can only use myself as an example, and I'm grateful to my therapist and the people that helped me through this process. Take my mother. I had to give my little boy, little Vinny, permission to write a letter to his mother. And by the way, I didn't give it to her. So these letters are for you and for therapy reasons only, and not to be given to anybody. I had to give my little boy permission to finally have a voice. I had to give that little child permission to be able to write to mommy and get rid of every negative feeling I had about my mom. Now, the letter does not have to make any sense. I'm just sharing my feelings. I never knew how many feelings I had inside of me that were bottled for so long. And be able to get that out and put it on paper and to write it. What I'm actually doing is I'm allowing my little boy to have a voice to express his feelings. As soon as he was done getting all that negativity out of him, then on the other side, I gave that little child permission to write down all the wonderful, beautiful lessons he learned from that mom. So what I'm doing is I'm now being the higher parent. I'm going to help that child and say, thank you for expressing your feelings. Now let's look at your feelings and let's be able to, as the higher parent, I'm going to help you to be able to look at those things and go through a healing process and be able to learn from them and grow from them and realize the fact that we're finally releasing and letting go. So you're giving your child a voice, and then you're helping that child to heal from that voice. So we use a principle in this process. I write my feelings, put them on paper. I write my positive things I'm learning from this experience. Then I take what I've written and I go to somebody I trust. You go to a sponsor, clergyman, anybody you feel you can talk to that you trust that will just listen. We need people in our life that will listen. What I think is I give that little boy permission to release his feelings and let somebody hear them. So I'm learning a principle. It's an old Karate Kid principle. Negative out, positive in. Negative out, positive in. I'm learning to release the negative, and by being able to share it with somebody else, it's almost like a little bit of a fifth step. I'm releasing it, letting it go. And then when I'm done releasing it, I will then take it, my negative letter. Here's where the God box comes into play. I recommend everybody should have a God box. My God box is just an old shoebox. What you then do is, if you read it, got it out, let that little child speak, you take the negative letter, you tear it up, you say a prayer, you give it to God, to your higher power, and you put it in the box. Then you take the positive lessons, the things you've learned from this experience, the healing letter. You read that. But you don't put that in the box, you keep that. So your negative notebook is going to get thinner. Your positive notebook is going to stay thick. And so from every experience in my life that I've gone through, I'm going to learn something positive. I'm going to grow from it instead of me being stuck in it. That goes for every area. As I'm learning now, finally, in recovery, I don't want to blame anybody anymore. I don't want to play the blame game. I want to be able to move forward. I want to be able to honor that child that's inside of me. But still, it's part of your history. So on occasion, the old tapes play. Isn't it wonderful? They come back. Even though I'm in touch with them, I know what they are, they still come back to visit. And so my addictive personality, every once in a while, gets lost. I got to get it back. I got to work through it. But every once in a while, that little child inside of me is going to have a reaction. And so I know for a long period of time, as part of my eating disorder, as part of my process, I carried a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and I don't want to build resentments anymore today. I want to be able to release them and let them go. Otherwise, they'll destroy me. I'm working with my sponsor in my program right now and going through the steps again. We just started the 4th step. And now we're working on resentments again. It's my 4th time through them. And I love it because I'm looking at resentments of today. But every one of them goes back and triggered from my childhood. It's just amazing how everything is interconnected. My father, on the other hand, I was able to release my negative feeling. I love my dad, believe me, love the hell out of him. But I also had to write a negative letter to him because my father gave me traits and characteristics that later on put me in jeopardy. My father was Mr. Wonderful and Mr. Fantastic, who did everything for everybody. The only problem was he taught me, do everything for everybody, then they will like you. And so he said, give it away, give it away, give it away, but don't bring it in. And I became my father. My gift for that was a nervous breakdown, 2 addictions. They're the gifts I got from that. It's totally amazing. I always tell the story, and I love telling the story. When I was a priest and I was stationed in Atlantic City, we had this gentleman that would come to visit our place all the time. He was a street wino. His name was Sonny. He would come to visit us. He was drunk, and he used to love harassing us at the rectory. He enjoyed it. He even threw a couple empty wine bottles through our window a couple times. So I was constantly calling the police on him. So one day he came to the back door of the rectory, and he said to me, "Hey, priest." I said, "What?" "Get in your car and take me to Carrier Clinic. I'm going to sign myself into the 6-month program. You're going to go up there for 6 months. Get the hell in the car. I'll take you anywhere to get rid of you." I dropped him off. I figured I'll never see that sucker again. He'll get stuck up here somehow. 6 months later, the doorbell rang at the rectory. Guess who was standing there? It was him. But he looked pretty damn good. He was 6 months in recovery. He looked at me and he said, "Father, are you still an idiot?" I said, "What? Are you an idiot?" I said, "What do you mean idiot? You see all those alcoholics and those drug addicts that come to you and you pay their bills, you bail them out of jail, you give them hotel rooms, you give them food, do everything for them. They think you're the cat's meow. They use you. When they come to the door, don't give them anything except treatment. I bet you don't get too many visitors anymore." He said, "Get the damn target off your back. Stop being an idiot." But these are all the great teachers that helped me to realize my traits of my father, although they were beautiful and good in certain ways, were negative in other ways. And therefore, I had to be able to learn how to set boundaries, learn how to say no, learn how to be able to do things, because this actually got me, when I was in the priesthood, to go $60,000 in debt from giving money away to people. God rest Sonny's soul. He's not with us anymore. There's a plaque in his honor at Starting Point's Memorial Wall, and I honor it. I used to meet him at meetings over on one side, and I walk in the meeting and he'd say to me, "Are you still an idiot?" I said, "Sonny, I'm only half an idiot now. I'm getting better." But the bottom line is I never realized how things I was taught, my foundations, how they affected me so powerfully. And yet I had to be able to go back and look at my dad. And believe me, I love the man. The man taught me so much. But what he went through, I understand. He was coming from another country, couldn't speak a language, and wanted to be accepted. So how do you get accepted? You do everything for everybody. Our family loved him. You want to know why? He cooked dinner for them, 35 people every Sunday. He cooked dinner for everybody. He'd come to visit them down in Wildwood, get off the train with 2 suitcases, one with veal cutlets and one with chicken cutlets. Everybody waited for him to cook, take care of everything. And that happened to me. Everybody waited for me to do this, do that. Vince will take care of it. Vince will do this. Vince will do that. Vince was nuts. What I'm learning today, I don't have to be totally my dad. Take the good, learn from it, be generous and be open, but also work on setting boundaries. Do I still make those mistakes today? Yes. You notice I'm only half an idiot. I'm getting better, but that's okay. But I realize more and more today, I can learn from my mistakes. I can grow from my history. And I just get a big kick out of going back and looking at history and learning from history. It is your greatest teacher. I really mean it. You learn your traits, you learn your characteristics, you learn your foundations. So I encourage people, take your time and to literally do, using those 7 questions, to do your own family history. Now, I got to say this. I'm explaining a lot of this stuff to you in 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Please don't try to do it in 40 or 45 minutes, all right? This process I'm talking about, working with my therapist, took me 4.5 to 5 years to go through. I'm grateful. I took the time, I took the investment, and I worked on it. And so that's why I told people, when you do this work and this concept and part of this workshop, I encourage them to do it with a couple of other people, to support each other, to give each other support as you go through it. And so it's a beautiful concept. But again, what it is, it involves a lot of writing, a lot of processing, a lot of releasing, but a lot of learning and a lot of growing. So it means I'm going to give that little boy, a voice. And today I'm going to keep giving him a voice. He still has a lot of stuff in there he's got to talk about. There's a lot of stuff that occurred to me in my life and my family and my growing up process I still have to work on. So I tell people in the program, especially codependents, there's no magic. I love that phrase we have in our recovery program. There is no magic in recovery. Recovery is hard work. Recovery is investment. Recovery is looking at yourself, but also celebrating and honoring who you are and realizing the beauty of yourself as a person. It's exciting to be able to look at your history, to be able to realize your traits and your characteristics. I got my dad in me. I got my mom in me. I'll have them till 50 years after I'm dead. When I get on the other side, I'll thank them for it. But they're part of who I am. And so instead of me trying to get rid of my past, you can't get rid of it. I'm sorry. It belongs to you. It's yours. You have to be able to embrace it, learn lessons from it, grow from it. But let that little child, that little boy, that little girl that's inside of you be your teacher. When I do inner child work next week, I'll show you through a series of a couple of meditations how to go and meet that little child and get in touch with that little child. Because to me, being able to finally get in touch with little Vinny. So Big Vinny and little Vinny have a relationship today. We talk to each other. Little Vinny gets mad at me a lot. So basically, little Vinny had hair too, so what can I tell you? But basically, I can laugh and joke about some of the stuff today. I can look back on it today. So there is a little Charlie, a little Vinny, there's a little Sue, there's a little Miriam, there's a little Loretta, God forbid, a little Loretta. Here we go. But the bottom line is, I look at all these things and I can laugh today and look at it in a positive way because it's just a way of learning. This is not about blaming God. I'm glad I grew up in the family I grew up in. Were my parents a little nuts? Yeah. Okay. Came out of a strong Italian family. My mother's side was a little connected. What can I tell you? My mom was a bookie. She booked numbers. It was fantastic. We had a lot of fun in our house, but it was a whole different world. But that was the world back then. The neighborhood, the culture. We looked at things in different ways. I don't know. My Uncle Johnny used to send me to the grocery store to pick up the groceries. I don't know, I was picking up number slips. I got a bag of groceries. Underneath was all the number slips. Gave me a quarter every time I went and got the groceries. It was fantastic. That back then a quarter was a lot of money. So it was again, you look at your environment, you got to be able to do healing through laughter, through growth, through learning, and basically through healing. That's what it's really all about. See, it's not about bad mouthing your history. Every one of your histories is beautiful. Now, or they have dysfunctionality in it, do they have trauma in it? Yes, all that stuff is there. There's hurt, there's messages, there's things that happen. We still experience them in our life today. On occasion, they'll come back up. One of the things I do when I do family history stuff, do a thing called family sculpting, where I sculpt the vision of your family. I'll do part of that next week. But the bottom line is I realized all my issues, I finally got to put them into a jail cell. I got to identify my issues. I'll show you that next week. And the bottom line is, even they're my issues, nobody else's. Even though I try to keep them in check, on occasion, they come back to visit. Why? They get lonely. They want to see you again. And so they come back, and I got to deal with them and put them back in the jail cell again. My addictive personality comes back out. It may not act out by addiction, but it acts out in other ways. It's totally amazing. I got to bring the sucker back where it belongs. I'm going to go through hurt. I'm going to go through pain. I'm going to go through struggle. But you know what's so beautiful about this? By doing my family's history, even doing my parents' history, I learned about healing. I learned about accepting. I learned about growing. Because if they could go through what they went through and be able to live and survive and be in this world, I don't think I could have made it through the stuff they went through. My father was in the First World War in the Italian cavalry. When they used to still charge each other, he had to bury himself under bodies of soldiers so he wouldn't get caught when his regiment got in trouble. He had horrible experiences. And then he goes home, his family pins my mother's name on him and tells him he's getting married. Sticks him on a boat, sends him to a place called America. He had no idea where he was going. When he got here, you saw my mother's name and address. He gave him a job on the railroad. It took him 7 months to make it to my mom. And my wonderful Italian family told me this. I don't know if it's true or not. Who the hell knows what's true and what's not true? It just is. They said he met my mother on Tuesday, married her on Friday, went back to work on Monday, took care of that relationship. Then they hung out for about 40-some years. What can I tell you? But the bottom line is, who knows? Because again, how did I learn about a lot of this stuff? Through word of mouth, through different things, through picking brains, through learning in different directions. That's what it's really all about. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this work. And so beautiful about this technique of journaling, you can take it to other areas of your life. For example, if somebody really gets upset at you and bothers you and kind of really twists it a little bit, instead of me being able to carry that inside of me, I don't want to carry crap inside of me anymore. I can write them a nasty letter. And then I can share that with people I love, people that will listen to me. Then I can literally tear it up and give it to God, say a prayer. Then I can actually find out, what did I learn from this? How can I handle this thing in a positive way, not in a negative way? So it's a technique of being able to pause and being able to finally release and let go. Instead of me walking around harboring and holding stuff inside. It's going to happen to you a lot today. Your little child's going to get hurt. you're going to get hurt. Don't carry it. So when you carry stuff, it carries you. When you bury stuff, it buries you. I'm grateful, so grateful to be able to constantly have people I can share stuff with today, to have a recovery family I can be connected to today. I don't need to keep secrets anymore. Do I have a lot of them? Woo! I could write the book on secrets. I'm not doing that one, that's for sure. But basically, we all got them. Come on, gang. And so the thing is, don't let them eat you alive. Don't take them to bed with you. Open them up. And the journaling is a great way of doing it. So get your notebooks out, start writing. And next week, we'll get into family of origin work. And I'll show you some techniques and ways that we do this. I'll talk a little bit about family sculpting and sculpting families. I'll even give the opportunity next week of sculpting my family. See, I can't do yours. Although I love to do Loretta's, but I can't do hers. So I'll basically do mine. Because I'm the only one that really knows my own, so whatever it comes down to. But it's a big part of this process we go through. And that's why I try to tell you, this is an investment in yourself as a person. Just try to be open to it. Try to learn from it. It's so important. So my prayer tonight is that we can open the door to be able to learn and grow and learn from our history, because our history is a beautiful teacher, scary teacher, and a wonderful teacher at the same time. So let us pray. God, I come before you tonight, God of my understanding, my higher power, my higher presence. I ask to open my heart and open my mind. Help me to go within. Help me to embrace my history. Help me to acknowledge it. Help me to heal, to learn, to grow. Realize that I am one of your creations. I'm grateful to you for all the people you sent into my life, for my family, for my background, for the things I've experienced. Teach me the gift of gratitude. Teach me the gift of humility. Teach me the gift of acceptance of my history. Teach me to love, to heal, and to grow from all the experiences in life. Teach me to realize that you are my best teacher. You send people into my life. They're my teachers. I thank you today for my family. I thank you for my life. I thank you for the gifts. I thank you for the struggles. I thank you for all the beautiful things we learned, we have to earn, and we have to experience. God, please help all of us get closer and closer to one another, to learn from our history, to be able to share it, to heal it, and to grow, to realize that we are your creation and we are your love. So we come together tonight, we pray and we ask for your guidance, for your direction as we embark on looking at our own family history. And we're grateful. We're grateful for what was, as the prayer said, and God, we're also grateful for whatever will be. But above all, we're grateful for today and the gifts that we have today. We ask this in gratitude. We ask this in your name. Amen.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.